Hey, folks, welcome to this weekly Day One Careers stream with myself, Evgeny, and with Gigi, who will soon be joining us. She's just running a little bit late, so we're going to get cracking while she is preparing. So, let me introduce myself first. For those of you who may not have seen my face before, my name is Yevgeny, and Gigi and I are running Day One Careers together. We've been doing so for a little while right now. I am, similarly to Gigi, I'm an ex-Amazonian. I used to work at Amazon for just over 3 years before moving to Apple, which is a completely different story. At Amazon, I was the head of marketing for Amazon Launchpad in Europe, and then I was the head of accessories category within the Amazon devices group. So, yes, so this is our weekly stream, and the way this works, folks, is that you need to ask us questions in the chat. The more, the merrier, and we answer your questions. Any question is a good question. The only thing that we cannot guarantee is that we're going to have a full amount of expertise for absolutely everything. Some things that definitely we've seen over the previous sessions that we've run is that ideally, if you can type your question up in just one message, that would make it easier for us to go and track it down. Another little learning that we have is that, folks, please try to make your question as specific as you possibly can. If your question is, I've got an interview in a week's time, do you have any tips for me? Well, we've got a YouTube channel that is overflowing with various tips on Amazon interviewing. So for all sorts of generic questions, please refer to our YouTube channel and our blog, by the way, that both have plenty of generic information about interviewing with Amazon. The other thing is we specialize in behavioral interviews at Amazon on everything that has to do with Amazon's leadership principles. While we may be able to refer you to some resources on things that don't relate to behavioral interviewing, such as system design, but we are not experts in this type of interviewing, so we may not be able to help. But otherwise, please make sure that we've got an entire queue of questions going. So at the moment, I can only see one question. Come on, folks, we need more questions about Amazon interviews. Don't be shy. We are here to answer your questions for this entire hour. And we're going to be bringing them up to the main live and answering them one by one. So while you guys are typing up your questions and bringing them up, I'm going to bring up this question here from Aldo, and I'm going to try and get my face above the question so that you guys can also see me. Aldo, and the question is, hi, if Amazon rejects you and the mail says the recommendation is to apply after 6 months, does that mean that is 6 months? It could be 1 year as well. Right. Let me take this question down. So the recommendation to delay your subsequent applications or to try again, that means it's called a cooling off period. Sometimes when you get a reject, you get a piece of advice from the recruiter that mentions a cooling off period. Sometimes there is no cooling off period. It really depends. What it means is that based on what they've seen during the loop, they think that you could use more time to generate more experience that you will then be able to effectively clear the bar in your subsequent interview. It's not a mandate. They're not saying absolutely do not apply, and if you apply, you will be automatically rejected. So that's not what they're saying. What they're saying is effectively, based on what we've seen, we recommend that you give it another 6 months. If you reapply after a year, that's great, as long as you spend this year accumulating great projects, great accomplishments on your resume that you will then be able to mention and convert in great examples that will hopefully help you raise the bar in your subsequent interviews. So I hope this answered your question. I think you've got a subsequent question here, which is, does the cooling off period start counting the day you started the process and submitted the application for that position, or the date that you had the panel, or the day that you get results? I'll be honest with you, I have no idea. Actually, we'll ask Gigi and see if she's got any idea. I actually don't think that it matters. I don't think it's that precise. If I were you, listen, the reason why they gave you this advice is not so that to tell you that the door is effectively shut exactly for 180 days. That's not how it works. They're asking you to give yourself some time to accumulate more projects that will hopefully allow you to pass the interview next time. Gigi, hi, we're talking about cooling off periods and everything.
Our favorite subject.
Yes, indeed, our favorite subject. So there's a gentleman here who was advised that there's a 6-month cooling period, and his question was, when does the process start? Does it start with the day of the interview, the day of the rejection? And I was trying to say, don't take it this way. It's just an advice to gather some more stuff onto your CV that you will then be able to sell back at Amazon.
Yeah, I get that question often, and I don't know the answer, and I don't think anyone has the answer because it's not systematic. So there is no ticking clock anywhere. So it could be any of those. Who knows?
Exactly. All right. Well, do you want me to pick another question while you're settling yourself
Please,
in?
yes. Sorry. Apologies for being tardy.
Excellent. All right. Well, in which case, we are going with a question from David Graham. Hey, David. So he was interviewed by a bar raiser on his second phone/chime interview. Is that normal? The big day long interview is scheduled the next week. To be honest, I don't really know whether this is normal or not in terms of putting a bar raiser for your first interview. So the bar raiser definitely can interview you in a phone screen, but in this case, I'm not entirely sure they would be acting in the bar raiser capacity. And Gigi, would you agree?
Yes. So they may be a bar raiser, but they won't be your bar raiser. So
Yeah,
bar raisers.
someone else's bar raiser.
Yeah, there's somebody else's bar raiser somewhere on the line. So you are a bar raiser, you just are, and you are a bar raiser who still has to interview under other circumstances as well. So I would have interviewed as an early interviewer in phone screen 1 or phone screen 2 for lots of people who were a team. I wasn't their bar raiser, I was just Gigi interviewing, and I happen to have a bar raiser tag against my name on the system because I was a bar raiser. So no, they won't be their bar raiser. They will just be a bar raiser.
And they just confuse the candidates because the candidates are thinking clearly that they decided to ask the bar raiser to run the phone interview.
Yeah, so I'm
Ooh.
curious to know how this person knows that the person they met was a bar raiser. I'm going to assume they did some homework on them on LinkedIn, and now it's become very de rigueur to put on LinkedIn that you are an Amazon bar raiser. So that then confuses people because they think, oh, this is my bar raiser, when it's not.
Indeed. All right. Well, David, if you would like to just give us a little bit of extra context and tell us how you figured out that that person was a bar raiser, maybe just post it into the chat window, and I'm gonna have a look at it and follow up on this. But meanwhile, Gigi, would you like to pick the next question?
Yes, I will. But I'm always too close. Oh, and I've still got these damn headphones on. Sorry, I was with a candidate a minute ago. Okay. Hi, Evgeny. Well, you've got me. Sorry. You've got an interview for Amazon EU. Is it okay for you to apply for a more suitable role in India, or should you wait for 6 months before applying in spite of different locations? So no, you can apply for as many roles as you like simultaneously at Amazon. The advice that we give, and which is definitely confirmed by my recruiter friends at Amazon, is that if you're going to apply for multiple roles, at least make them roles that make sense. So, product manager role, apply for as many as you like. Program manager role, apply for as many as you like. Don't apply for a product manager, program manager, vendor manager, brand manager, marketing manager, because it will look like you're just trying to throw mud at the wall and see what sticks. But if it's in the same job family, totally apply for as many roles as you like. You don't need to wait 6 months. Okie dokie,
Excellent.
that's it.
That's amazing. All right. Well, I'm going to pick the next one. So this one is from All About Road. And the question is, while answering in a star format, do we take a break after each section of the star, or should we just tell the whole story at once and then ask for feedback and questions? So if I were you, I would just start answering the question exactly as you normally would, as you were preparing your stories. Don't forget to write the question down, and don't forget to ask for some time to gather your thoughts before you start answering the question, just to give you just to buy yourself those 30 seconds of valuable time, and then just respond to your question as you normally would. And what will happen then is you will either encounter an interviewer who likes to have a bit of a chat. And so once you start volunteering some data and some information, the interviewer will start asking you questions. And then your job is to make sure, A, that you answer the question, the follow-up question that the interviewer is asking you, and then B, to get yourself back on track so that you can continue telling the story. And the second interview style is when the interviewer will just allow you to play out your story exactly as it is. And if you get this interview style, then there is no need to take breaks. Just tell the story as it is, and if someone needs to follow up, they'll follow up, and they will ask you more questions. Anything from you, Gigi?
No, it's perfect. Okay, so I'm going to pick this one from TK. So if there's no cooling off period, does that mean you interviewed well, but something else caused a rejection after the loop? No, not quite. So if there's no cooling off period, it generally means you weren't a million miles away and just wasn't your day, or there were some questions about potentially not being quite strong enough in the most important leadership principle areas for that particular role, but overall you looked like a fair candidate. The only people that go into cooling off periods, and of course this is a bit of a sweeping statement, but the people that go into cooling off periods tend to be the people who really were quite a long way off being considered bar raising, because they are trying to protect against inefficiencies in the process. If you know someone is quite a long way off on the day that you interviewed them, and you cannot imagine that if they were interviewing again in a week's time or a month's time, that they would be materially closer to being able to prove that they're raising the bar, you take a cautious approach and you say, actually, we probably shouldn't see them again for another 6 or 12 months because it would be a waste of time if we did. So it's more around, you weren't a long way off on the negative side more than it is you were actually quite close. If that does that make sense, Evgeny, when I say it that way?
Yeah, it makes total sense. I mean, for folks that are very, very, very far from the bar, I mean, they wouldn't even recommend this. Yeah, so don't worry. So do as they say. Get yourself some cool projects and come back again.
Your turn.
Right. Well, I've got a three-part question here, which we are going to parse through. So here comes part number one from Haitam. Hi, Evgeny and Gigi. Many thanks for your videos. Need your advice. After the panel with the HR manager called to say that due to the internal changes, they had to put their application on hold. Boom. This is not a yes or no, and the panelists panelists have actually shared some very positive feedback on you, and it could take us between 2 weeks to 2 months until we finalize regarding that position. In the meantime, I encourage you to apply for other jobs at Amazon if you wish. What are your thoughts on this, please? And what are the chances of making it through? Thanks. So, listen, from what I can tell, their feedback is actually very genuine, and it represents exactly what's happening there. Something happened to this role, this requisition, which means that they cannot proceed hiring for this role. It has nothing to do with your application or your interview performance. It's literally an internal issue that they're having. It's very possible that due to the economic outlook out there, this role is now on hold. Maybe there's a hiring freeze in the team. Maybe they are considering to restructure, and they're wondering whether they need this role. And so a senior leader in their team said, you know what, if we do have anyone in the hiring pipeline, we should probably hold on to that, because we shouldn't really be hiring people only to make them redundant there. So I think they really want to progress with the process of hiring someone in this role, but they just can't. So what they're doing is very responsible. They're just letting you know exactly how it is, that they're in a bit of a pickle, and because they believe that you might have a chance with Amazon, they're recommending that you should not let this situation with this particular role to kind of put you off applying for other roles at Amazon. So my recommendation and my advice is take them up on their recommendation. Apply for other roles at Amazon, and all the best. Hey, Gigi, do you think that's a fair
Yep,
assessment?
totally fair, totally fair. Okay, I'm going to pick this one. Hey, one of the interviewers during the loop didn't show up and it will be rescheduled. What are the odds that they reschedule, or would a decision just based on the feedback from other, right? I get your point. Okay, so someone not showing up, it happens, unfortunately. The reality is the people at the other side are human beings as well, and stuff happens in life. You get sick, your kids get sick, it didn't go in your diary, all sorts of things can go wrong. So it's not great, don't get me wrong, but it happens. What are the odds they reschedule? Couldn't tell you. No data to empirically give you some statistical numbers there on the odds of rescheduling. Or would a decision be based on the feedback from the other? That's going to depend on how big your panel was. So if you had a panel of 7 and one person didn't show up, and now you've got a panel of 6 as the bar raiser, I would be quite comfortable with making a decision based on a panel of 6, even if you were an L7. If you had a panel of 4 and someone didn't show up and you're down to a panel of 3 and you're, let's say, an L5, I, as the bar raiser, would probably not accept a panel of 3 to make a decision. So unfortunately, and I say this all the time, there is no hard and fast rule on these things. It's going to depend absolutely on the broader context of the situation. So my tip is keep following up with your recruiter to try and get that session rescheduled until they tell you, if they tell you, actually, we've decided to go forward without that particular session. But keep chasing. I hope that helps. Anything to add, Evgeny?
Nothing to add from my side. I'm all amazing. So I'm picking this one from Niraj, and the question is so big that I just like have my nose over this banner, so I'm just gonna try and lift myself up. There you go.
You need to sit
Doesn't
on some
help.
cushions. I think we both need to sit on some
Yeah, I
cushions.
need to borrow some from my children. Also, it doesn't really help that my head's so big. But anyway, right. Let me just read this one through. So, in the loop interview, say 5 rounds of interviews. Okay, pretty classic. Um, how many leadership principle use cases do we need to prepare? Does that mean I gave answer in one round and the same question comes in the second round? Can I use the same? Okay, great. So we've got 2 questions here. So question number one, how many leadership principle use cases do I need to prepare? So by use cases, you probably mean situations. So typically in a loop with 5 rounds of interviews, I'm going to assume non-technical loop because I have no idea if it's a tech job that you're applying into a non-tech, right? So I was going to assume a non-tech job. For non-tech job, it's 99.9999% behavioral. I'm kind of leaving the 0.0009% for just a random hiring manager who decides to throw a functional question at you. Usually they shouldn't. So let's just assume pure behavioral loop. It's going to be 2 leadership principles per interview, so 10 leadership principles in total. And for every leadership principle, we recommend that you prepare 2 situations. Now, these situations, when you prepare them, you should prepare them not to answer individual specific questions. There are plenty of questions out there and on the internet. You will also get a fairly robust interview question bank with us. As you can imagine, there are, Gigi, I think it's 187 questions, right, in the entire question bank, I think, or something like that, right?
There used
So
to be 100. There used to be 114. I don't know. I'm going to check that out. Keep
right.
talking. I'll see if I
Big
can find the
number,
answer.
right? Whatever
Yeah,
the
big
number
number.
is, there's a big number. It's a big number. And so you won't be able to prepare 114 to 187 situations. So what you should be doing is you should prepare situations that respond to a theme that underlies the leadership principle. We call these themes facets, and we go in a great deal of detail in these themes in our leadership principle deep dive courses and in the Amazon interview whiz. Yes, so that's basically 2 situations per leadership principle, and align them to the themes or facets of the leadership principle. And your second question is, if you had a question in round 1 and the same question comes up in the second round, I'm going to assume it's a loop. Can you use the same situation? And the answer is, the first thing that we recommend that you do is you mention this to the interviewer. Just say to them that their colleague who was running the first round already used this question. So unless you have anything else that you would recommend, I'm going to go ahead and use the same answer and see what they say. Maybe they're going to say, yeah, sure. Maybe they're going to pick a different question from the leadership principle, or maybe they're going to switch to a different leadership principle altogether. So take their recommendation. And I think that's all I have, Gigi.
Cool. Okay, so I've picked my next one, which is this is from NA. Okay, so you're an Amazon interview whiz. You're a day 1 careers candidate. Hey.
Hello, hello.
I'm glad you find it useful. Okay, your question is, okay, you had your first phone interview with the category general manager, and you have your second interview with the same role level of the team which you applied. Is that normal? Yes, very normal. So you would expect through your whole interview process to be interviewed by your boss, someone who is a peer of you, so probably on your boss's actual team. You might also expect to be interviewed by someone from an adjacent team who is at the same level as you. You might also expect to be interviewed by your boss's boss or someone who is an equivalent of your boss's level in an adjacent team. So all very, very normal. Did I miss anyone, Evgeny?
No, I think this is great. Right, we've got a question here from Design. So Design is interviewing for an L6 principal UX role with the hiring manager next week, and is asking for any specific advice for UX roles. And the person is also interviewing with Google and is asking if it's okay to mention this to the hiring manager. I'm going to take this question off the screen because my face is hurting. Right. So I don't have any specific tips for the UX interview, at least for the behavioral part. I think behavioral part should run very in a similar way to other roles. What I will say though is mentioning that you are interviewing for other companies is useful. However, the number 1 person who should know about this is your recruiter, because your recruiter will then be, or whoever recruiter will be looking after pulling together your compensation, because you could be a different recruiter, but let's just assume for the sake it's just one recruiter. They should know that you're interviewing with other companies. I would not use it in a braggy way. I'll just mention it in passing that you feel privileged about being able to talk to so many amazing people in the high technology businesses, like you guys, and also at Google, where I'm interviewing tomorrow. Boom, they know you're interviewing with Google, and they will keep that in mind when they're pulling together your offer. But I don't really have much advice specifically for UX roles. Gigi, do you have anything for UX roles comes to mind?
Not specifically.
No.
It's going to be the same as everybody else when it comes to the behavioral side of things.
And isn't that great? Because how many role families there at Amazon? There are thousands, right? There are thousands,
I would imagine it's in tens of thousands
tens of
now, if you
thousands.
think about the number of different kind of businesses that actually exist in Amazon, because it's not just Amazon, right? Amazon is a brand. There's retail, there's Kuiper, there's AWS, there's music and entertainment, there's care, Ring, it goes on and on forever. So I would say there's probably over 10,000 at this point, I'd say.
And exactly the same way to interview for the leadership principles. That's great.
Okay, well, it's great for us anyway.
And for the candidates, they can prepare, right? Doesn't matter.
Absolutely. Okay, so what was the question that I wanted to cover? Okay, yeah, I'm just going to do this one. Right. Hey, Semper Ives. I think I recall your name because it's an unusual name. So, is there any flags to look for if the interview is not going well? Okay. My response to that is don't look for flags. You need to focus on answering the question in the interview. Don't second guess what's going on in the moment. Like, definitely don't waste any mental cognizance on what's going on in the moment, and try not to worry about it once it's been and done, because it's been and done, right? But you just need to have your ears open. So if you're being asked follow-up questions, listen to the follow-up questions that you are being asked. Sometimes it's just you've piqued someone's curiosity and they're like, oh, that's interesting, tell me more about that. Other times, if you're paying attention, you might realize that there is a pattern forming in the follow-up questions that you're getting. So for example, okay, can you just give me a bit more detail here? Can we go back to this because you said something and I want some more detail there? Or if someone's starting to probe you on numbers and they're saying to you, well, you just mentioned this number and then you mentioned that number, you can often see patterns in the feedback. You need to, or follow-up questions, should I say, you need to take a second before you answer a follow-up question and ask yourself first, why do I think I'm being asked this follow-up question? Because your response to that follow-up question should be an amalgamation of the actual answer to the follow-up question and also your interpretation of why you're being asked that follow-up question. So, ears open. Take a moment anytime anyone asks you a question, whether it's the initial question to start the actual example, or if it's a follow-up question, you should always take a nanosecond, maybe a bit more, to reflect on
Two
why is
nanoseconds.
this person, 2 nanoseconds, why is this person asking me this question before you answer it? That's it. That's my response to that one.
That's brilliant. Decoding the interviewer. Okay, so this one is from Selma. And the question is, I have the last on-site interview tomorrow with one interviewer, which was rescheduled. However, the review meeting is also scheduled tomorrow. Is it possible that they will decide already tomorrow? Yes, it is possible. You know what's also possible? That they're going to reschedule the debrief. If I were you, I would just take a deep breath and embrace the radio silence as long as it lasts. I mean, Amazon, from all the tech businesses that I have had experience with, seems to be one of the better ones when it comes to not getting their candidates to wait for ages. So the candidate promise is still alive 5 working days after the loop, or 2 days after the phone interview. So I'll just give them the time that they need to decide. But yes, if they still press on with the debrief, they can make a decision on that day. That's it. That's all I got.
Sorry, my family are off. Oh, Yevgeny, I don't need to run away. I had thought that I would have to run away at 6, but my husband's made it back in time to take my child where she needs to go. So I will be sticking around. So with that in mind, and at this point in the show,
Oh,
my
yes.
favorite bit. That's my favorite bit. Okay, so and I'm conscious it's getting dark in my office as well, so this is good moment for me. So I will quickly just answer this one, and then we'll do my favorite bit, which is, do we work with a lot of UX candidates? I'm curious to know how far we book out. So we work with all sorts of candidates, because to our point earlier, the leadership principles and the way you need to answer behavioral questions is exactly the same whether you are a solutions architect, a UX designer, a marketer, a vendor manager, a finance manager, building manager. I've had someone who actually constructed the roofs on the FCs, the fulfillment centers, like everybody and anybody. So I have personally coached quite a few UX candidates, but we deal with all sorts. And how far do we book out? So for context, we have, I'm sure Yevgeny mentioned it, we do our digital courses and we also do one-to-one coaching. So generally we book out, I think about 2 weeks in advance now, I think, if I think about where we all are at the moment. So probably about 2 weeks booked out ahead of time. If you want to come and check out our website, we do only offer one-to-one coaching for people who are part of our digital course network. We do that because we were just in so much demand. We discovered that we were unable to support people who were already part of our community. So we had to gate it and close one-to-one coaching off to people who were outside of our community. So just thought I would let you know that. Right, now, my favorite part of the show. You're going to love this, Evgeny. Oh, I think you've already seen this one, haven't you? So
I have, yes.
right. So we have a request of all of you out there. We obviously put a huge amount of effort into YouTube and all of the things that we do. And we ask one little favor in return, which is, if you watch any of our content, please do either give it a thumbs up or put a little comment below. The reason we ask this is it delivers what's called positive engagement signals to the YouTube algorithm. Once it gets these positive engagement signals, it knows that people like our content and our content is being shown to the right people, and therefore it lifts us up the ranks. There is plenty of absolute trash that appears before us in the algorithm, and we need you to be able to get this content to candidates who need some good quality stuff. So I would like to ask you for the next couple of seconds to please do just give this particular video a little thumbs up. And for that, I have a little video to entertain you. You don't know what's coming, honestly, whilst you do that. So I'm going to click that video now. And whilst I do that, please do give us a little thumbs up. Here we go.
Like, please like the stream now. Like, please like the stream now. Like, please like the stream now. Like, please like the stream. 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 Like the stream.
I have
Amazing.
to tell you, I am particularly proud of that high note at the end. Next
That
time you
high
listen
note
to
is
it,
insane. What do you got? Mezzo soprano?
I have no idea. No idea. I tried to do like one of those YouTube videos where you work out what your range was, and it I don't know. I don't know, but yeah, I'd love to know, because I've got quite a large range. But my kids were killing themselves laughing at me, because obviously I'm doing this in an office and my children are stood outside the door. What are you doing? Because you have to record obviously them individually, so
Yes,
you can't
it's a
hear them.
multi-track record, isn't it?
Yeah. God only knows what my neighbors think of me. Right. So everybody, please, I hope you did give us a little thumbs up. If you did, thank you so much. If you didn't, please leave now. Just go. I'm joking. Again, he's like, don't go.
Please don't.
Right. Okay. Have you got one? Do you want to pick another one?
Oh, I was too busy.
You were distracted, were you?
Oh yeah, I was totally distracted. But you know what? I'm just gonna find one very quickly, and I'm just gonna. So we've talked with Ene Semper. Okay, I see. There. Okay, we've got one that we need to pull out. what to expect
Ah.
in a phone interview for the PMT cases, and this is the just here to comment. Right. Phone interview for PMT cases. I actually have no idea. Do you, Gigi?
Well, this is another one of those, there is no single answer to this, particularly at the top end of the process. So when it comes to Loop, everything is quite firmly regimented. There is a bar raiser and there's an expectation as to how interviews will be structured. It's all very well and clearly laid out. When you're higher up the funnel in phone screen 1 and phone screen 2, there is no oversight from a bar raiser. So although there's what the interviewers are probably supposed to do, there's also what they do. And each team can choose to flex things. So the truth of the matter is, it depends quite a lot on your actual team and what they decide they want to do. Usually what we find in our community is that, and when you say PMT, I'm assuming this is a program manager technical.
It's or a product
It could be
manager.
a product manager technical. Yeah. So if it's a product manager technical, I'd probably expect some kind of technical testing in the early rounds. And more often than not, it tends to be around systems design, just to make sure that you understand the basics of how kind of the structure of systems, etc., works. Never heard of anyone from a product management tech point of view having to go into coding or anything like that. I also think the same is true in the majority when it comes to program managers technical. They want to get a sense that you understand the basic construct of how things work from a technical point of view, so that you are competent when it comes to being able to actually program manage. But it will depend enormously on the team that you're on, and the best person to ask this question to is always going to be your recruiter. So I say this to absolutely everyone. If you're asking us what to expect from your phones, from your first phone screen, go and ask your recruiter, because we can guess, but they'll know the facts.
That's fair.
Okay. It's my turn now, isn't it? I stole that one from you. Sorry.
No.
You
came to the rescue. Let me give. Let me see what else I can get. So there's a lot of questions about the technical knowledge. Here's another one here that we need to take, and that is, thanks you all for being awesome and answering my questions. And yes, Gigi, you recall my name correctly from your last event.
Oh, there we go. When people have cute little pictures or interesting names, I tend to remember them. So for everyone else, I'm sorry, my memory isn't that good. All right.
Okay, I've got one.
You got one.
Here.
Okay, shoot.
How many behavioral questions do you actually get per interview? I'm going to have 4 times 45 interview in 1 week. 45 minutes feels like a long time, and they're going to ask like 6 to 8 LP questions per something. Don't know what else per. Right. Again, for a non-technical scenario, your 45 minutes will be filled with, I would say, 3 to 4 questions. I'm saying 3 to 4 is because the interviewer will come ready with 4 questions, 2 per LP. But then depending on how your interview actually goes, typically they may be able to go through all 4. They may not be able to go through all 4. It really depends. But you should be ready for 2 leadership principles and 2 questions per LP. I have seen, and Gigi, you might be also interested. I have heard of candidates who were telling me about the quote unquote a rapid fire LP interviewing. So literally, they will do the 6 to 8 questions, multiple LPs, just boom, boom, boom. The candidate will tell a story and they immediately move to the next question. I honestly don't know why they would do this. I heard it once or twice. It sounded like a hiring manager or an interviewer impromptu, but it does happen, but it doesn't happen too often. The usual scenario is 3 to 4 questions per interview.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, so here we go. Hey, it's Jay. Hey, Jay.
Hey, Jay.
Oh, cool. That's interesting. Jay, I think your grammar's wrong here. We need an apostrophe because it's not belonging to Jay. It is Jay. What a pedant I am. Sorry, Jay.
Have you invested in Grammarly lately?
No, I remember that one from school. I don't remember much
Good
of
for
my
you.
grammar from school, but I remember that one. All right. So, do you know the way I use it? No, it's belonging to means you pull it towards you, and therefore you don't need the apostrophe. It's belonging to you. If it is, you need the apostrophe. Anyway,
It's
right. So
like
you
that.
have an L4 pod panel with 3 interviewers. Can you bring the same scenario that you used from the phone interview, and how many questions would you be asked from them? Okay, so Yevgeny has just covered off the how many questions you should expect, so I'm not going to do that one. Can you bring the same scenarios from your phone interview? So this is our favorite question because this is a very divisive question. There are mixed feelings about this inside Amazon. You will find some interviewers and bar raisers who would prefer that you don't use the same examples from your phone screen because they see it as effectively a chip that's already been cached. It got you to the next stage, and what they want to see is a consistent, fresh set of examples to effectively justify keeping moving you through the process. Other people feel differently and say, yes, I would expect the candidate to bring back exactly the same example. So where we have landed as a team, and there are now 5 of us here in Day One Careers, is that our recommendation is you take a conservative position and you try wherever possible not to repeat the same example between phone screen and loop if you possibly can. If you can't, then what we suggest is that you use the same example but for a different leadership principle, and therefore focus on very different elements of the example than you did the first time you used it in the phone screen. I hope you remember to follow our advice from our YouTube channel, which is to make sure that you have written down the question and also done a bit of a review of the interview yourself. Those are 2 different videos on our YouTube channel. And if you have, then you should remember which question they asked you and what answer you gave them, and therefore know to change it and kind of focus on something else for the loop. Final thing is, sometimes, unfortunately, you may find yourself being asked exactly the same question between phone screen and loop. This can happen because there is a new policy now where the only people that can see your phone screen notes are the hiring manager and the bar raiser. So anybody else who is interviewing you will not know what you were asked before. So if you are asked exactly the same question, I think you might have mentioned this earlier, actually, when I just joined the session, Yevgeny. Basically, our advice is to tell them you've been asked this question before and that you'll give them exactly the same answer unless they tell you otherwise, and wait to hear if they tell you otherwise. That's it.
And that is indeed the advice. This is a question here on the writing assignment. So Maurizio here is writing an assignment about Senior Cloud Solution Architect for his Loop interview. Any suggestions about how many pages, how deep I need to go in details? Thanks a lot. So if your writing assignment has a question, which they usually give you in that assignment, that sounds like one of those leadership principle interview type questions, i.e., tell us about the most innovative thing that you have ever done, or tell us about a time when you anticipated a customer need with a solution that they had no idea they wanted or needed yet, then and I'm going to assume that they didn't actually provide you any more guidance, right? They didn't tell you how many characters, how many pages, which they do sometimes. Let's just say they just gave you that question as your task and didn't give you anything. That our recommendation is maximum 2 pages, font 10, 11-ish. Yeah, I'll leave the choice up to you. And that's it. That's all you need. In terms of depth, I would follow a star format loosely. If it helps you, use subheadings that relate to the star section: situation, task, actions, results. If you have to, if it helps you develop the narrative. However, when you submit the narrative, take the subheads out. And your narrative needs to be able to stand on its own feet without the crutches of the subheadings. In order to not to have to rely on the crutches of the subheadings, use plenty of connectors like therefore or first, second, if you're building lists, that sort of thing. But otherwise, that is pretty much it. And by the way, do invest in a grammar checking tool that checks your grammar. So we have been running written sample assessments within our community for over a year, and I can tell you, on average, based on my rough calculations, a writing assessment has about 30 spelling, grammar, and punctuation mistakes, which is something that is out of our scope. We don't check people's grammar, but we do have a very sophisticated tool that does it for us. Yeah, so please do make sure you don't submit your perfectly written assignment with 30 spag mistakes. That's all I have.
Cool. Okay. So I'm going to pick this one. Oh, we're back with Semper again. So you only used 2 stories for the first interview, and that showed that you needed to recall more. Okay. Should you expect the same types of questions from the first interview for the loop? It depends, Semper, what you mean by types of questions. So the types of questions that we can all expect are either the behavioral questions or functional questions. So logic would dictate that, yes, you should definitely expect the same types of questions. If you were interviewed through rounds 1 and 2 with both behavioral and functional, then I would suggest you probably should expect behavioral and functional in your loop. If you had functional in a round 1, but then just pure behavioral in a round 2, then I suggest odds are that they'll just now be focusing on the behavioral in your loop. Again, I would suggest the best person to ask rather than us guessing is to ask your recruiter. There's no harm in asking a question. The worst they can say is, I can't give you the answer to that, but always bias towards asking the question. And then you did a quick follow-up, which is, which day 1 program would be the best for you? So, as we mentioned, everybody is questioned on the leadership principles using the behavioral method. So we have created a very specific custom-made Amazon digital course, which is called the Amazon Interview Whiz. So yeah, I would say come and check it out, the Amazon Interview Whiz. If you stay until the end, Semper, we're going to give you a freebie from that course, just a tiny snippet out of that course. It's kind of a standalone thing, stands on its own 2 legs. So you can check that out. And if you like it, then obviously we'd love to have you as part of our community.
Indeed. Amazing. All right. So here we've got a 2-part question from Nitin. So the first part is, what is the optimal time duration for sharing a story? As I felt, if I try to put in a lot of details, it may easily go over the 3 minutes, and I feel it may lose the interviewer interest. Gigi, you're going to love this one, right? Because apparently, rumor has it that if your response to the interview question is over 3 minutes, then the interviewer loses interest and then apparently does not pass the candidate through. So, these pesky interviewers, they need to be entertained, like my little children, right?
Yes, they
and
have
be fed candy.
the intellectual focus of a gnat.
Yes. No, that is all incorrect. And to yourself, Nitin, and to everyone else listening, whoever is spreading these rumors, and they're doing it quite effectively, that your response needs to be less than 3 minutes, otherwise the poor interviewer lost interest, is utterly wrong. This is the example of trash, or rubbish, as we say here in the glorious United Kingdom, that is just floating out there on YouTube. Do not listen to any of this stuff. What we typically tell candidates is that if you have a story that is worth telling, then tell the story and do not watch the clock. Now, if you're one of those people who appreciates a bit more tighter guidance, then I'm going to tell you this. If you need a timer, then time yourself to something between 8 to 10 minutes. If you can tell a concise story in 8 minutes, that's it. Do it. Now, I am assuming it's an L6 type story, right? If you have an example that is for a bit of a more junior role with less details, then you can potentially tell it in fewer minutes, but you don't have to push yourself to tell a story in 2 minutes or 3 minutes. Just tell the story as it floats with the level of detail that you believe is relevant, and don't watch the clock. I also mentioned earlier on this session that sometimes you'll get an interviewer who will not allow you to go the full distance and tell the story. As soon as you volunteer some details, the interviewer will start following up and asking you follow-up questions. And then what are you going to count? Are you going to count the entire duration of the interview, of your conversation, and try to cram that in 3 minutes? I mean, yeah, it's not going to work. So don't worry, just tell the story. If you want to learn how to structure the story with just the right amount of detail, so that whatever 6, 7, 8, or even 10, God forbid, 10 minutes that you're spending that there is as impactful as possible. My English is failing me today. Then watch our YouTube channel, or if you've got the budget, invest in our training, and then we're going to tell you exactly what to do. So don't worry. This is the first part. And second part, I'm going to go quickly. Are there repetition of principle in the overall interview process? I have no idea what this question actually means. Do LPs
Yeah, so the
repeat?
LPs get
No,
repeated.
they don't. No, they don't. They don't. The only time when they can repeat is when you have a phone screen and the loop. Yes, there might be the same leadership principle, but generally speaking, they should not be repeating. And 3, any guidance on how to see if my story is as impactful as they are expecting? Not during the interview, unfortunately. There's no reactions that you will be able to interpret as, yes, I'm doing great, it's impactful, it's landing, or not. And you won't be able to do that. What you can or should be able to do is get yourself in the community where you can practice with partners a lot, and at least from partners you can get some feedback on whether your interview stories are landing or not. And obviously if you are able to book any of us for coaching, then we can tell you that as well, although we are pretty booked out. So maybe just practice with partners if we're not available. Anything to add, Gigi?
Nope, nothing to add. Right, I'm going to jump onto this one. Hi. So you've applied for an import logistics role, right? And you're having your interview scheduled this week. Can we provide what would be the leadership principles? Okay, so no, we can't. To our point a little bit earlier, there are, I think, over 10,000 job families. There's no way that we would know all of those off by heart and be able to tell you what the key leadership principles were for each one. However, there are some things that you can do to try and work it out. The first thing you can do is go to our YouTube channel. We have a playlist on that channel, which is about me deconstructing leadership principles from job descriptions live. So there are 2 of those. We should do another one of those. Actually, I haven't done it for I think 9 odd months. Oh, Yevgeny's yelling at his children. I haven't done it for about 9 months. So we'll do one of those, I think, soon, where people just send in their job descriptions, and live I take you through how to look at it word for word and identify the key leadership principles that the job description is referring to based on the language being used. So go check out that video, and hopefully that will be a tip for yourself. The other thing that you should definitely do is ask your recruiter if they can tell you what the key LPs are. Odds are about 50-50. Some recruiters won't do it, some recruiters will do it, and I've never been able to work out any type of pattern as to who does and who doesn't, so you may as well ask. And then the third thing you can do is we do actually offer a service at Day One Careers where I will deconstruct it for you, but certainly go those first 2 routes first and see how you get on. That's it. Over to you, Monsieur Yevgeny.
Excellent. Merci, Gigi. Now, this one is
It
from...
sounds good with the French accent, doesn't it? Gigi.
I know. Sounds amazing.
It's an alternative career.
I know. Right. So, Lucas Joseph. I'm going to assume Joseph is your first name, but oh well, maybe not. So, sounds like you're done with the loop interview and you're expecting the results soon. Great stuff. What's the next stage if you clear? Will it be an offer letter or a negotiation, or just a message that you cleared? It could be either of all these. We've seen everything happen. We've seen a recruiter sending an email saying, hey, can you provide an availability for us to talk about the next steps, whatever they are, after your loop. There were messages saying, congratulations, let's talk about next steps. So anything can happen. The thing is, what's going to happen is outside of your control. But there's one thing that is within your control, and that is preparing for the negotiation. No matter what steps Amazon will take to move from your inclined loop to an offer. If there is a job, if there is an inclined loop, and if there is a job to offer you, it doesn't really matter. There will always be a negotiation, and you should be ready for this negotiation. And then the way to do that is to research the ranges for the role, the type of role that you interviewed with, in the location that you interviewed with, and be prepared to work out what's that minimum number below which that Amazon offer from Amazon will not be valuable to you, and you will walk away and stick to that number. That's pretty much it. Anything to add, Gigi?
Nada. I am going to pick this one from Vio. What if the interviewer is asking you metrics related to confidential data from your previous workplace? You should just tell them that unfortunately you can't share that data with them because it's confidential, and they will completely understand that. Everybody should be conscious about the metrics that they provide. Amazon will tell you they're a very metric focused organization. They want to see the data, but equally, I can assure you that they will also be thinking about the data that you provide and making sure that they're comfortable with the data that you've provided. I have been in some debriefs where alarms have gone off because people have shared information that is clearly confidential. This tended to happen in Amazon ads, where people were working with competitors and starting to share information that Amazon wouldn't be happy if our employees were sharing at that competitor if they were interviewing there. So be careful, because obviously they want the data, but you don't want to share confidential data would then make Amazon concerned about your own trust. But yeah, there's no problem with saying it's confidential. But what you can do is convert the data into some kind of a metric that does not breach confidentiality, but does give a sense of your impact. So, for example, if there's a revenue number that's clearly confidential and you've moved it from 2 million to 5 million, but you can't share that because it's confidential, then talk about the percentage lift that you achieved. So there's a way of being able to demonstrate your impact without breaching any confidentiality. Anything to add, Yevgeny, Mr. OKRs?
I have two things to add. Number one is, that method that Gigi just talked to you about, using percentages, that's actually a great method to demonstrate impact, even if your metrics are not confidential. Because guess what? Amazon thinks in tens of billions of just about anything. Like, pick your favorite KPI at Amazon. It's so big. So you will never impress them with any absolute number. If you want to make sure that the absolute numbers that you're sharing, if they are not confidential, if they're as impactful as possible, always provide a percentage that will immediately contextualize the impact to your world. It works for folks, for example, who worked in startups, where the absolute numbers are not as crazy as the ones at Amazon. And the other thing that I will add is, if you find yourself in a consulting role, for example, and you are sharing client-facing situations and your client names are confidential, just think about a way how you can obfuscate them. For example, I don't know, the top 5 telecom provider in the United States could be any of the top 5s. So there are other clever ways in how you can do it to be comfortable with the NDAs that you've signed on the other side. But that's it. That's all I've got.
Cool. It's your turn.
Oh, it is my turn. I should have spent more time looking for the question than just
exactly.
yapping
Just
away.
yapping on.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Okay. Well, there you go. That's another one from Joseph Lucos Joseph. I am from India and I have done the loop interview for a position for Europe. I am worried if there will be a problem after clearing. Will Amazon prefer someone else from Europe even after clearing? I'm going to say no. If they interviewed you, if they are interviewing externally, what this means is that they have worked out that they are ready to sponsor for this role. And if they have actually invited you to the loop, then it means that they are ready to evaluate your candidacy to exactly the same bar as they would be evaluating folks from Europe. So your passport and your location will not be a problem for the voting. It may become a problem for the actual job offer in case your visa application falls through, but then it's not specifically an Indian passport issue. It's any issue of admin stuff. But in terms of making a decision on whether to vote inclined or disinclined, it shouldn't be a problem as to what passport you have. Now, I'm not going to give you a 100% guarantee whether there's not going to be some biased, evil interviewer that for some reason decides to sort of favor Europeans over Indians. Again, as Gigi mentioned, there are humans on the other side, but I'm going to say that Amazon has made everything in its power to minimize the chances of that ever happening. Anything to add?
Nope, nothing to add. So will I pick our final question and
Please.
then we can close down. So the last one I was going to choose was, right, this one. So Hashim, sorry if I pronounced that incorrectly. You interviewed for a role. You weren't asked that many behavioral questions. It was more about situations you've experienced in localization. So this speaks to the point that there's no question here. It's an observation, but I'm going to speak to the observation. This speaks to the point about what we were saying in terms of the amount of variability that can exist in interviews. So as I said, when you're in Loop, it's clearly very well structured. You've got a bar raiser overseeing it. When you're in phone screen 1 or phone screen 2, and if you have it, it's really much more dynamic and up to the team in terms of how they focus. So in this instance, this would be what I would consider to be functional questioning, competency-based functional questioning, because they want to get a sense of, do you have the necessary skills and experience to do the job? So that speaks to why it is that you didn't get very behavioral, you got functional, because they've decided they wanted to make sure that you can technically do the job before they push you any further on to find out whether you would be a good Amazon leader. Okay, so it is time to move on. Samesh, I've just seen your question. Sorry, the reason why I've called that Samesh is like here every single week without fail. So I'm literally going to say, hi, Samesh, how are you doing? And I'm sorry, your question is too specific. So no, I can't answer it, but you've noted here that apologies, it was specific. So let's now move on to a great part of our session where we are going to give you, fingers up please, Evgeny, we're going to give you the, without question actually, the best freebie that is available out there for Amazon interviewing. And it's the best one because it's complete in onto its own right. So please go check out this URL and you can get yourself one of our free courses or our free course. This basically is focused on customer obsession. Pretty much every one of you, if you make it all the way through to Loop, will get asked customer obsession as one of the behavioral questions. It is a perfect model of exactly how we teach the leadership principles. 3 parts. First of all, the different facets of customer obsession. There are 4 of them, and Evgeny spoke a little bit earlier about our unique model for understanding the leadership principles with the facets. So it shows you those. It then tells you what the interviewer is looking for in your actual answer. So that's incredibly helpful as a framework for what you should be thinking about communicating in your answers. And then thirdly, there is a mock interview of me interviewing me, different hair and makeup. Obviously, it looks very convincing. So you can check that out and see how it all kind of comes together in an actual interview. It's totally free. No strings attached, and it stands on its own 2 feet. You don't have to buy anything else in order to make any sense of it, which is usually what you get when someone gives you a free course. Nope, stands on its own 2 feet. Promise you, you'll love it. If you follow the guidance there, you will nail the questions asked on customer obsession in your interview. And that's it.
And Discord, and you get access to our free Discord community.
How did I forget that?
You just need to literally, you need to get this freebie, the customer obsession taster course, and you will get access to our Discord server and to the free part of our Discord server, which you can use for questions and answers with other candidates and to find interview partners. Very useful, highly recommended.
How many people do we have in that free community now? I don't even know. Is there a way
to
find out?
It's over 2,000. It's over 2,000.
2,000. Right. There's 2,000 other Amazon candidates in that community for you to actually have direct dialogue. There are candidates who have been through Loop before. There are candidates who are going to Loop. There's candidates who have been coming out of phone screen 1, phone screen 2, the online assessment. It is a huge pool of knowledge there for you for free. So please take the course, enjoy it, and join our community. And you might see us once in a while there as well. On that note, you need to go get your kids in the bath. I need to go and sort out the shepherd's pie. So thank you, everybody, for joining. And we'll be back again on Monday.
Thank you, everyone. Take care. See you later.
See you, Evgeny. Bye.
Bye.